Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is June 10th, and this is day 10 of 37 conversations. We're gonna have a conversation about diversity and inclusion. Today, my heart is just so full today. I mean, I'm so happy. We had, participated in two great protests today. By the grace of God, blessings of God. There was no issues, no problems. We were safe. I apologize for going live a little bit late tonight. We had thunderstorms here in Tampa and everything. TV was going out, electricity was, in and out and stuff. So I had to take a little bit more time before I, went live with everyone tonight. Gotta give a shout out to some people though. Seriously, today the first protest I participated in, the Tampa National Panhellenic Council, which we've talked about before. That's the Divine Nine, the 9 historically black fraternities and sororities. We all came together for the purpose of unity, for the purpose of protesting the death and the murder of Breonna Taylor. And, the fact that those police officers haven't been arrested yet, the fact that those police officers, the police union and the cops had a very ambiguous investigation and statement that they released last week. So we came together in unity for that. The Tampa NPHC put that together. Got to give a shout out to all those fraternities and sororities that came out. We were all represented very well. We were deep out there. Gotta give a shout out. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna name them all. I gotta give a shout out to all the Divine Nine. The ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha were out there. The ladies of Sigma Gamma Rho were out there. The ladies of Delta Sigma Theta DST, they were out there. My sisters of Zeta Phi Beta, they were out there deep. To the fraternities, gotta give a shout out to those guys as well. Omega Psi Phi was out there. Alpha Phi Alpha was out there. Iota Phi Theta, Kappa Alpha Psi was out there as well. My brothers of Phi Beta Sigma were out there. We were all deep. Out there. It was a good time. We were very blessed and very fortunate to not have any issues take place. Chief Dugan from the Tampa Bay Police Department was with us. My voice is still messed up because I participated in both protests. And it was just a really, really good time. It was a really good time. And, we were just very fortunate that, we were blessed with good weather. We got thunderstorms tonight, and it was just great. And then at 4:30 tonight, there was 4 p.m. actually, there was another protest that was organized, I think, by the Young Democrats from University of South Florida. One of the speakers that was speaking at the time, when she addressed the crowd, we couldn't hear her very well, but I think she said she was from the Young Democrats from USF. So shout out to them. Shout out to Tampa NPHC, for putting together the protest today at noon. So glad, we were blessed that we had no issues with that. So, just wanted to get into the conversation that, we're going to have tonight about diversity and inclusion. I'm gonna try to keep this one kind of short because, like I said, my voice is still messed up from protesting all day. Was protesting everything, walking the streets and stuff. So, so I'm just gonna get into it. So when I'm talking, when I've had conversations with people about diversity and inclusion, the way the analogy that I utilize is diversity is like having a party, right? It's like having a dance. Diversity is having a dance. Inclusion, on the other hand, is asking someone to dance, okay? And, for the longest time, there was a point in time in which we were not well represented. People of color were not very well represented in society, in all levels of society, whether it's the nonprofit sector, government, local government, federal government, state government, business, law enforcement, what else? There are so many aspects of society in which politics, in which, people of color were not represented. And we asked for more diversity. We wanted more diversity. We wanted more people that looked like us up there. which is important. But on the same token, the difference would be, we've been in the dance for a little bit, and in many respects, in many aspects of society, we're not dancing where we should be. We don't have the representation. We don't have the seat at the table. There's that saying that goes, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. You know what I mean? So we have had opportunities in which, we have a more diverse, legislature. We have a more diverse business community. We have a more diverse nonprofit community, and so on. However, the issue is the inclusion is not there. The inclusion isn't always there. When policies, legislation, even rules within a workplace or even within the local society are being mandated, and we are not included in those decisions, we're not included in informing those decisions, we're not included in the verbiage and the construction of matters that impact us, that's a problem. So what we need to do is we have to fight for that. If you are a person that gives to nonprofits, you should certainly encourage as well as influence and raise your voice to ensure that not only are there people on the board of directors and in the leadership that look like the people that are being served in those communities, because by and large, nonprofit organizations address social issues, and unfortunately, people of color are, because of their marginalized status, are the ones that are typically the beneficiaries of those nonprofit organizations' missions. So it's very important that we encourage and demand that their executive leadership as well as their board of directors are not only representative of those communities, but they're also including those voices. The inclusion is an important element as well. Business. In our workplaces, we not only do we have to make sure and ensure that the leadership and the executive leadership of any board of directors of businesses that are serving our communities are reflective of the communities that they serve, but those voices, those people of color, those marginalized populations must also be included in that as well. Goes same thing with politics. We certainly have more people of color that are present in politics today that were present in politics maybe in the 60s, 70s, and maybe even 80s actually. But it's important that those voices are we heed those voices. We have to ensure that people are we're included. That inclusion aspect and that inclusion element is critical. That's why it's so important that we don't always only vote when it's time to vote for president, but we also vote for local elections. We vote for our local city councils. We vote for our local county commissions. We vote for our local city commissions. It's critical because even beyond the fact that we're represented, not always are we included in the decisions that are being made that impact our everyday lives. So having this aspect in this conversation as it relates to diversity and inclusion is critical, and it's pervasive throughout society, because if you're someone who is really about the Black Lives Matter movement, if you're really someone who really is your eyes are wide open and you're looking at this issue in its totality, you realize and you understand and you really get the gravity of the circumstance that this again goes way beyond police brutality. It's about access to healthcare. It's about access to education. It's about environmental justice. It's about the LGBTQ community. It's about the issues that we have at our border. It's about the issues that are impacting our brothers and sisters who are also, of special needs and need additional accommodations, to ensure that they can, navigate society in the same manner that we do as well. All those matters are critically important, and it not only representation, which is also the diversity piece, but it's also critical for us to be included in those discussions. It's important for us to be included in those discussions as it relates to policies and mandates and rules and justice and equity in that level in which that is impacting all of our lives. This conversation is very complex. It's very complex, and it regards us as it requires us, as I mentioned before, for us to have complex solutions for them. So, the diversity and inclusion element is critical to that. Tomorrow we're going to talk about, equity versus equality. And, that's another thing that I feel that people, see they think it's the exact same thing, but it's not, in the same exact manner in which many people that I've had conversations about think that diversity and inclusion is the exact same thing. This doesn't go to mean, I'm not saying this to mean is which in the fact that, like, we don't have, white counterparts or Asian counterparts or, Latinx counterparts who are not, standing in solidarity with us. That's not what I mean at all, because there are certainly those individuals that do as well. And then also, as we've talked about before in previous conversations, there's a lot of intersectionality that exists with these matters. One of the largest ones is socioeconomic. So, some of the socioeconomic, systemic racism issues that the Black community is plagued with and people of color are plagued with. We have other, minority groups and marginalized populations that stand in solidarity with us because they have also been, poor. They have also understood what it's like to not, know where that next meal is coming from and such. So that doesn't mean that, I'm not saying this to mean that there are not other individuals or other populations that do not stand in solidarity with us. But on the same token, there's a difference between, I've always learned before, there's a difference between Black leaders and leaders of Blacks. And I think that ultimately, having that inclusive mindset, having that, social justice and social equity lens that we are, that needs to be applied to all issues, all social issues that are impacting our communities, impacting our country, impacting our local, regions and such is critical. Very, very important. So fighting for diversity's sake is tokenism. Just simply having someone in a position because they are a person of color is only maybe not even half the battle if their voice isn't heard, if their voice isn't taken into consideration, if their voice isn't appreciated. I've been in and I've worked in environments and even served on boards in which, you when you have that realization where it's like, okay, well, you've asked me to be in this organization, or you asked me to be on this board, and then you realize that your voice isn't being heard. Your voice isn't being appreciated. And it's not being taken into consideration in respect to the manner that, as we've talked about, as I talked about earlier, policies and issues and mandates are being put forth and legislated. That's a problem. You realize, that, okay, well, you're trying to check off a box, you're trying to check off a square, you're trying to have someone in a position because they're simply a person of color. But the diversity aspect, that's only a portion of it. The inclusive aspect is even more important. So, like as I said before, diversity, that's asking everyone to the dance. That's asking everyone to the party. Inclusion is asking someone to dance. And, we're at a point in which, with this movement and how it's, just changing and it's morphing and it's gaining steam and, there's so much, just simply put momentum behind it. We have people, our counterparts and other marginalized populations, our white counterparts who are standing beside us and amplifying their voices and helping us to amplify our voices in this fight. And it's amazing. It's transcontinental as well. You can look online. I'm sure many of you have seen it in the media in the effect that, other nations are even having these same exact conversations because racism isn't just an issue that's plaguing the United States. On the same token, as we've talked about in other conversations, however, I feel, it's my personal opinion, that the United States hasn't come to grips with racism, hasn't come to grips with having a conversation about the impact that people of color have had in this nation and celebrated them in the right way. We haven't had we haven't had the universal social consciousness understanding as it relates to the struggle and the challenges that people of color have in this country. So, when there are people who don't understand, the need for, when affirmative action was a thing, I'm saying when that was more popular, when people didn't understand the need to provide more support and resources for communities of color and marginalized populations and the intersections of those populations as well. I think it's a matter of, equality versus equity, which we'll discuss tomorrow, but there's also about diversity versus inclusion, because, there are many conversations that I've had, preceding this series where, someone will say something like, oh, okay, well, Barack Obama was just president, or, there's a black Supreme Court justice, or black people are more prevalent in the news, in the media, in politics, and so on and so forth. And that's true to a point. That's true. I can disagree with that. But on the same token, the aspect of inclusion and the aspect of ensuring that those voices are heard and understood, and that those voices are taken into consideration when decisions are being made for marginalized populations, I'm not sure that we're there yet. Especially in the lower levels of society. When I say lower levels, I mean, not even so much as it relates to government or as it relates to big business. I'm talking about, smaller companies. I'm talking about lower workplaces, smaller workplaces, excuse me. It's really important that, because many, jumping around as I am in this conversation, I saw a lot of policies. I saw a lot of narratives and stances that are being taken by corporations as a result to this movement that's going on with Black Lives Matter. I had a good conversation with my brother Larry McLeod today. Shout out to Larry. He was talking to me about how, hey, listen, man, like I've been protesting my whole life. Larry's a black man. He's like, I've been protesting my whole life. And when Blackout Tuesday occurred a couple weeks ago, last week, and so many corporations were participating in that movement. A lot of corporations were drafting issues and stances on diversity, equity, and inclusion. They were drafting words on social justice and how to speak to their employees and how to speak to their families and just elevating that and amplifying that message as it relates to social justice. Some of those corporations, some of those businesses, some of those workplaces, some of those organizations that I know personally did not even involve or even include voices of marginalized people or even people of color in crafting those messages. That's a fail. It's not thoroughly thought about. It's not thoroughly crafted. That's the inclusive piece that I'm speaking about. Because when we are not being authentic and genuine in our message, when we're not being authentic and genuine in our approaches to this complex issue as it relates to discussing race, as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're not going to. We may never cross that finish line because there are always going to be people who have prejudice in their heart. There are always going to be people who are racist. But when we're not including, back to my previous point, when we're not including those marginalized people, those people of color, in crafting those messages, making those decisions, being a part of those policies that are impacting people of color, is going to be even that much more difficult to get to where we need to be on a broad level. That's ultimately my opinion about that. So diversity versus inclusion. I mean, before we just wanted more representation. We wanted more people that looked like us, being in places of power, being in places of significance. But I think a byproduct of that has been tokenism, certainly. I think a byproduct of that has been short-sighted. We think, I think that some of our majority counterparts have felt that the problem has been solved or the issue is being adequately addressed by simply putting a person of color in a position of influence. But those voices need to be heard. Those voices need to be included, and there needs to be intentionality behind it. And I think that those who are about the Black Lives Matter movement, those who stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, we need to demand it. We need to demand not only that people that are marginalized, people of color, are in those positions of influence, but that also their voices are heard. Those voices are authentic and genuine, and they're taken into consideration. So, as always, hopefully this is a discussion that please share in the comments. Please share with your friends, family members, colleagues. Again, I have to apologize because of the chanting and the protesting that I was doing today. But please share with those that you care about. And think about that analogy. Think about that analogy. Diversity isn't the finish line. Inclusion gets us closer to the finish line, because we've been dancing for a while in many aspects of society, but we haven't been asked to dance in other aspects. So hopefully, this is something that you can take and digest and share with others. As I said earlier, tomorrow I'm gonna have a conversation about equity versus equality. And then on Tuesday, there's been a lot of people that have been asking about the white privilege conversation, and that's coming. That's coming. That's coming on Tuesday. And that wasn't lost on me. That wasn't lost on me. That wasn't something that I was ignoring, that I was pushing to the side. As this series has gained more steam and gained more popularity and such, I just asked to be on a talk show, on a coffee morning talk show, to discuss these 37 conversations and the dialogue that's growing from these conversations. I'm doing that this upcoming week as well. But not straying from my previous point, however, as these conversations gain more popularity, I've had to do a more intentional job in scripting them out a little bit, as well as scheduling them appropriately. So, whereas white privilege could have been one of the very first conversations that we had earlier, I'm going to have it on Tuesday. So, I hope you can join us. I hope you can join me in this conversation tomorrow when we discuss equity and equality, and on Tuesday when we discuss white privilege. So happy, as I told you at the beginning of this conversation, my heart is full. This was a beautiful day. So happy with, all the people that I met, everyone that was in solidarity with us. Tampa Times was out there. WFLA 8 was out there. ABC Action News was out there at the protest today. And the words that were spoken to me about, from some of those, people from the media, it just seemed so genuine. They said they'll keep coming back. They want to amplify our voices. They want to hear from people like us. They want to be a part of the conversation. They said their eyes are wide open and their ears are wide open as well, because they're listening. And that's what we need. That's what we need. So, we need to keep this energy. We need to maintain this energy. And if it's even possible, we need to ratchet this energy up, and we need to keep this going. All the protests, everyone that's out there that's fighting the good fight, keep it going. And for one thing, please don't let it stop before November. Please don't let it stop before November, because we got to vote. We got to vote. But voting, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. So God bless everybody. Hope you have a good night, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.